Have you ever walked into a room and immediately sensed the lie everyone else believes? Seen the rage behind someone's smile? Felt the collective delusion holding a group together and known you can't say it out loud? Carl Jung documented patients who were tormented by an ability he called differentiated perception, and he considered it genuinely dangerous. Not dangerous to you, dangerous to the social fabric itself. These patients could see through every social mask, feel emotions people are hiding, sense patterns in groups that others won't recognize for years. Jung discovered this ability either destroys you through complete psychological breakdown or transforms you into something society desperately needs but instinctively attacks. If you've ever been called too intense, dismissed as overthinking, or isolated for seeing what everyone refuses to acknowledge, this might explain why your loneliness feels different from normal loneliness. Here's the 3 dangers Jung identified, why society instinctively attacks you for this, and his individuation process that transforms this curse into evolutionary power. Here's what most people don't understand about what you're experiencing. This isn't sensitivity. This isn't intuition. This isn't being highly perceptive. Jung identified something far more specific and far more isolating. He called it differentiated perception, the ability to perceive what's happening in people's unconscious minds, the feelings and truths they're hiding even from themselves. Jung himself experienced this during his confrontation with the unconscious in 1913. He described sensing patterns in his patients that they couldn't consciously access. Buried rage underneath polite professionalism, hidden desperation behind confident presentations, family delusions, everyone protected but nobody believed. Jung wrote, "I could feel what people were pretending not to feel. I saw the person behind the performance, and once seen, it could not be unseen. That's differentiated perception. You're detecting the fury behind the polite smile, the desperation behind the confident presentation, the family's shared delusion that everyone protects but nobody believes, the unspoken agreement in every room. We will not acknowledge what's actually happening here. Stop." Here's what makes this unbearable, and why Jung considered it dangerous. You become a mirror, reflecting what society refuses to see. Jung called this the curse of consciousness. Once you've seen through the social mask, you can't unsee it. Going back to believing the performance becomes impossible. The emperor is naked, and pretending otherwise makes you complicit in the lie. Jung documented multiple patients who described this same experience. I tried to ignore what I was sensing, tried to just smile and play along, but my body wouldn't let me. I'd feel physically sick sitting in rooms full of people performing happiness while drowning in unspoken pain. This is the torment Jung observed across dozens of cases. You're dismissed as too sensitive when you're actually perceiving accurately. You're told you're overthinking when you're seeing what's really there. You're isolated, not because something is wrong with you, but because you're threatening the collective agreement to pretend. And that threat, Jung warned, comes with 3 specific dangers that can destroy you if you don't understand what's happening. Jung documented 3 specific dangers that differentiated perceivers face. Each one can lead to complete psychological breakdown if you don't understand what's happening. Danger 1. Disrupting the collective unconscious. Here's what Jung discovered. Every group, every family, workplace, community operates on shared illusions. Unspoken agreements about what's real, what's acceptable, what we pretend not to see. When you perceive what's actually happening beneath these agreements, you destabilize the entire system. Jung wrote, "The individual who sees through the collective mask becomes a threat to group cohesion. Not because they intend harm, but because their mere presence reveals the lie everyone has agreed to believe." A patient told Jung, "At family dinners, I could feel my father's alcoholism poisoning every interaction. But the family rule was, we don't acknowledge it. The moment I stopped playing along, even without saying anything, I became the problem. My presence alone disrupted the shared delusion. You're not being excluded because you're wrong. You're being excluded because you're accurate, and accuracy threatens survival for groups built on pretending. The group must eliminate the mirror to preserve the illusion. Danger 2. Psychological exhaustion. Jung identified a phenomenon he called participation mystique, the unconscious merging with others' psychological content. Here's what this actually means. When you perceive others' unconscious material, you don't just observe it, you absorb it. Their buried rage becomes your rage. Their hidden despair becomes your despair. Their denied pain lives in your body. Jung observed that differentiated perceivers lose the boundary between self and other. You walk into a room and suddenly feel emotions that aren't yours. You talk to someone and carry their psychological burden for days afterward. And here's what makes this devastating. You start to forget who you are beneath what you're absorbing. A patient described it to Jung this way. I stopped being able to tell which feelings were mine. Was I depressed, or was I carrying my mother's depression? Was I anxious, or was I absorbing my colleague's panic? I was drowning in everyone else's unconscious while my own self disappeared. This is psychological exhaustion, not from effort, from dissolution. Your boundaries collapse until there's nothing left of you. Stop. If you're feeling overwhelmed by these first two dangers, that's the point. Jung warned that understanding this intellectually isn't enough. You have to feel the weight of what's happening, because the third danger is the most brutal. Danger 3. Scapegoat targeting. When you reflect back what a group refuses to see, you become the target for their collective shadow. Jung documented this pattern repeatedly. The person who sees the truth gets attacked for revealing it. Not consciously, not deliberately, but instinctively. The group projects their denied shame, rage, and pain onto you. You become the scapegoat, the negative one, the problem, the one who ruins everything by simply existing in your accuracy. Jung documented this pattern across dozens of cases. One patient described, I became the family's negative one simply by existing in my accuracy. Every unspoken problem, every denied conflict, they blamed me for bringing darkness into the room. But I wasn't bringing it. I was reflecting what was already there. Jung observed that differentiated perceivers reach a critical fork in the road. You either fragment completely, breaking under the weight of what you perceive, your psyche splitting to escape the unbearable accuracy, or you undergo what Jung called individuation, the systematic transformation from unconscious absorption to conscious integration, from drowning in others' unconscious material to wielding it as evolutionary power. Most people never reach this choice point. They break long before they understand what's happening. If you've ever absorbed someone's emotions and couldn't tell which feelings were yours, comment, I've lost myself in others. Here's what Jung discovered about who develops differentiated perception and why. Jung identified multiple psychological types, but one was particularly prone to this ability, the introverted intuitive. These are people whose attention naturally turns inward, detecting patterns beneath the surface of things. But Jung observed that type alone doesn't create differentiated perception. 3 factors typically converge. First, early trauma. Jung documented this pattern across dozens of cases. Many differentiated perceivers developed this ability as a childhood survival mechanism. One patient told him, I learned to read my father's unconscious before I could read books. I had to sense his rage before it erupted, detect the danger before it became visible. The ability saved my life, but it never turned off. Second, psychological makeup. Some people are simply born with thinner boundaries between conscious and unconscious. Jung called this permeability. You don't choose this. Your psyche is naturally more receptive to unconscious material, yours and others. Third, natural sensitivity. Not emotional sensitivity, perceptual sensitivity. The nervous system processes more information, detects subtler signals, picks up patterns others miss. When these three factors combine, you develop what Jung considered a crucial evolutionary function. Here's what most people miss about differentiated perception. Jung believed these individuals serve as humanity's early warning system. You're not broken. You're not cursed. You're a psychological pioneer. Jung wrote, certain individuals must make unconscious contents conscious before they manifest destructively in the collective. They are the advanced scouts of human consciousness. Think about it. You sense patterns in groups before they become visible. You detect dysfunction before it explodes. You feel the rage building before the violence starts. You see the delusion before the collapse. Stop. Here's what this actually means. Every time you've sensed something others couldn't see and been dismissed for it, you were detecting a pattern that would eventually become obvious to everyone. You were just 5 years early, or 10 years, or a generation. Jung documented this repeatedly. Patients who sensed their family system was breaking years before the divorce. Employees who felt the company's dysfunction years before the bankruptcy. Children who knew the community's violence was building years before it erupted. You weren't wrong. You were early. Here's why you can see what others can't. You're perceiving their shadow, the parts of themselves they've denied, repressed, or refused to acknowledge. Jung explained it this way. When someone buries their rage, their shame, their pain, it doesn't disappear. It lives in their unconscious, and if you have differentiated perception, you sense it. You feel what they're hiding from themselves. That's why they attack you for naming it. You're not inventing problems. You're reflecting back what they've worked their entire lives to avoid seeing. Jung observed that this ability, seeing others' shadows clearly, only becomes useful once you've integrated your own shadow first. Otherwise, you're just drowning in everyone else's unconscious material without any capacity to help. And that integration, Jung discovered, is the key to transformation. Here's the transformation Jung discovered. He called it individuation, the systematic process of transforming differentiated perception from curse into conscious service. Jung lived this process himself. During his confrontation with the unconscious between 1913 and 1919, he nearly broke under the weight of what he was perceiving. He documented his own journey from psychological crisis to integration, and that process became the foundation of analytical psychology. Jung identified 3 essential steps. Step 1. Differentiate your feelings from absorbed material. The first step is learning to distinguish what's yours from what you've absorbed. Jung developed a daily practice he called active imagination. You sit with the emotional content you're carrying and ask, is this mine? Or did I absorb this from someone else? A patient described this to Jung. I started tracking my emotions throughout the day. When anxiety hit, I'd stop and ask, did this start inside me? Or did it start when I walked into that room? When rage surfaced, was it my rage or my father's rage living in my body? Within weeks, I could feel the difference. My emotions had a different texture than absorbed emotions. This is differentiation. You're no longer drowning in everyone else's unconscious. You're consciously distinguishing self from other. Step 2. Integrate your own shadow. The second step is facing what you've denied in yourself. Jung observed that differentiated perceivers are often excellent at seeing others' shadows, but blind to their own. You must acknowledge your capacity for rage, manipulation, cruelty, the parts of yourself you've labeled bad and projected onto others. Jung wrote, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. When you integrate your own shadow, something shifts. You stop being triggered by others' darkness. You can perceive it clearly without absorbing it, without judging it, without needing to fix it. Step 3. Develop conscious relationship with the collective unconscious. The third step is learning to maintain boundaries with the collective unconscious while staying in relationship with it. This is the paradox Jung identified. You must stay permeable enough to perceive accurately, but boundaried enough to not dissolve into what you're perceiving. Jung himself demonstrated this integration. After his confrontation with the unconscious nearly destroyed him, he developed systematic methods to maintain boundaries while perceiving unconscious material. He transformed his ability into depth psychology, using differentiated perception to help humanity understand itself. He didn't just survive his ability, he weaponized it for collective psychological evolution. Stop! Here's what Jung discovered about integrated perceivers. They form a secret community throughout history. Shamans who sensed the tribe's unconscious patterns, prophets who warned of collective shadow eruptions before they manifested, artists who made unconscious material visible through their work, depth psychologists who systematized the integration process. You're not alone in this. You're part of an evolutionary lineage that's existed as long as human consciousness has existed. Jung observed that successfully integrated perceivers don't just survive their ability, they transform it into medicine for collective psychological evolution. Your differentiated perception becomes the early warning system humanity needs. You help groups see their shadow before it destroys them. You make unconscious patterns conscious before they manifest as crisis. This is your evolutionary function, not to suffer in isolation, but to serve as a conscious bridge between the individual psyche and the collective unconscious. Here's the truth Jung discovered. Your differentiated perception is dangerous. It destabilizes group illusions. It exhausts you psychologically. It makes you a target for collective shadow projection. But it's also evolutionarily necessary. You have a choice: psychological breakdown from unconscious absorption, or conscious integration through individuation. Jung's final insight: successfully integrated perceivers help humanity adapt to unconscious forces before they manifest as crisis. You're detecting the patterns that will destroy communities, families, civilizations, if someone doesn't make them conscious first. Your awareness is an evolutionary gift wrapped in a psychological burden. If this video resonated deeply, if you recognized yourself in every section, you're one of these rare differentiated perceivers. And this channel exists to support your individuation process. Comment, "I see what others refuse to acknowledge."